I have a confession to make. I've not always been the most positive of people. And if you feel the same, this video is for you because I'm going to talk about optimism and what it can do for you. I'm going to share 6 ways that I think will help you see the positive side of things. And at the end, I'll even share a bonus one as well. So stick around to the end and see what it is. Author Tim Hansel said, "Pain is inevitable, but misery is optional." And from personal experience, I've found that to be true. It's really easy to let yourself get down. It's so easy to get overwhelmed with the wave after wave of negativity. At the moment, people appear to be bogged down with racism, politics, hatred, religion, and so much more. Many people sadly can't see any end to it, fear for the future, and see nothing to look forward to. And it's so easy to be swept along by it all. But there is another way. It's possible to view all the things we're going through and treat them just as they are, situations in the outside world. Now, I'm not a head in the clouds kind of person. After all, when my mum was pregnant with me, she wanted to take the drug thalidomide to help her through the sickness. Luckily for me though, the doctor advised against it as he didn't feel it had been tested enough. I went to school with children that weren't as lucky as me, and I've seen firsthand the effects of what that particular drug can do. So I'm not blind to what can happen. I fully understand that the world seems to be more complex than it ever has been before, but I don't feel as though it's that the end of the world is nigh time. Just because I'm optimistic, it doesn't mean I'm oblivious to the concerns. I just choose to look at the things in a way that allows me to feel better. And that's what optimism does for you. It allows you to see things in a brighter light. It lets you see the joy and not the despair, the light and not the dark. It stops you from worrying and getting more and more depressed about the situations that surround us. After all, it's been said that the majority of what we worry about in the first place never comes to pass. I think optimism is nature's way of giving you new energy, a way to nurture yourself. It's like putting on an armoured coat. Over the last few years, I've looked for and found ways to help me stay optimistic. I'm not saying that I've come up with a way that's 100% certain to cure your ills. I'm just saying that I've found some ways that have helped me. Before I carry on, if you think I've said anything that rings a bell with you, I would love it if you could hit that like button. I'd also like to hear your thoughts on this as well. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Where do you find that most of the vitriol we keep seeing starts? From where I sit, media companies seem to be a major culprit. With the 24/7 news coverage that we now have, the big media companies around the world are fighting for your attention. And to get it, they become more and more sensationalistic. They want the biggest headlines. They want the headline grabbing stories. And they want it first. Each company has its own agenda, and it's mostly about money. So they spin the story the way they think that their viewers and readers are going to gorge on it. It's not really news anymore, as it's become another form of entertainment. They want you glued to it. And social media isn't any different. They like to keep the fire stoked so that we keep responding and they keep us on the platform so they can sell the advertising. They allow the arguments to keep going and we're swallowing it all. Some people out there are reveling in it and on a daily basis stir up discontent as though it's their only reason for being. I've been at the stage where instead of scrolling by, I've read everything and then I've got wound up by it. I'd reply to some comments and sometimes before I hit that post button I'd delete the comment because I just thought it would start an argument. But I was hooked. Here's the first thing I've done to boost my optimism. I've cut back on the time I spend on social media. I stopped buying newspapers and I've stopped watching the news. Anything that's really important has still found a way of getting to me though. And you'd be amazed at how much better I felt once I stopped allowing all that negativity into my head. And just because I've given up on the newspapers, it's not stopped me from reading. What I've done is I've changed my reading habits. In the last month or so, I've read a David Baldacci crime novel, a book called The Art of Noticing, and I've just started reading an autobiography on the singer Suggs of pop group Madness. Reading takes me to another place. If I'm reading a self-help book, I'm getting advice on specific things and getting a broader view. When I'm reading an autobiography, a biography or a memoir, I see how other people have coped with their situations and moved on, which helps me feel that I can move on from my situations as well. And reading novels takes me to another world altogether. I think reading enriches our lives in so many ways. And because I've taken my control over what I'm reading, that's the second thing that has helped to raise my enthusiasm and my optimism. How do you feel when you hear an upbeat song, particularly if you like it? I'm well known in our house for Dad dancing all around the living room. The others may cringe, but they also can't help smiling at the same time. Listen to your favourite music. Sing out loud, get a smile on your face. It'll lift your spirits and it'll raise your optimism at exactly the same time. Now we're halfway through. If you're finding the video has some value, would you consider subscribing to the channel? It would help the channel progress and I'll get the opportunity to share with more people. Let's get back to it. And don't forget to stick around at the end for that bonus tip. Now, as you can see by my body shape, me and fitness are not the closest of friends. The only time you'd catch me running is if I'm being chased down the road by a Rottweiler. I went to a gym once and the trainer told me firstly to get on the bike and start loosening up. As I pedalled, he kept telling me to pick up the pace and I thought I was going to pass out. When I got to the level he wanted, I almost fell off the bike, and as he pointed to the other equipment he wanted me to use, I went in search of a bar. As far as fitness is concerned, walking is about my limit. Even though I sometimes struggle and have to make myself get up and go, by the time I've come back I feel better, more refreshed and more relaxed. Have you noticed there's a section of the population who always seem to have hope and a welcoming spirit? Now, I'm not a religious man, but I can see how it helps if you are. If you're religious, think about your faith. Pray if it helps. It hasn't stopped me from reading spiritual books either. I've recently finished Mathieu Ricard's book Happiness. Now, he's a Buddhist monk and he talks about his philosophies in it. And while I don't agree with all he says, I found plenty that I could agree with. So I'm fully aware of how people's spiritual side can nourish them when times are hard. I may not be religious, but I do have a spiritual side, and I fall back on that and it helps me keep my optimism up. And I have to ask you a question. How do you feel when you talk and play with kids? I've always found that talking to kids cheers me up. They see the world in a different way to us. They dream more, imagine more, and I think they see more than we as adults do. And playing with them, wow, I've drunk more cups of non-existent tea than enough. I've laid on the floor building Lego more times than I care to imagine, and I've eaten some of the most disgusting things whilst playing with them at the same time. And each time I've interacted with them, I've been able to leave my cares and woes behind. And that raises my optimism. So there's 6 ways that I think can help raise your optimism. Doing one or more of them can easily cheer you up. However, I promised you a bonus one. Here it is. How would you like to spend more time doing something you like and not realising how much time you spent doing it? I started this YouTube channel in March. I can spend hours trying to do something new and master a new skill. Doing it makes me feel good, and before I know it, hours have passed. There's so much we can do to help overcome the negative, and starting a new hobby or going back to an old one is my last suggestion. So as you can see, my advice is this: take the time to do things that cheer you up, that help you realise it's not as bad out there as people would like us to believe. Whilst there seems to be so much to make us feel overawed, there is still good to see now and in times to come. And like Tim Hansel said, pain is inevitable, but misery is optional. Choose optimism. Better times are out there. And speaking of hobbies, click up there and I'll tell you why people are embracing forgotten hobbies for a happier life.